good day. We're back again. Like I always say in the past, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. In Australia now, they are like far, into the next day, and in some part of the world, they are just approaching 7, 6 in the evening. I mean, right where I am now, it's just about 10 o'clock in the morning, or. So that's why I always say good morning, good afternoon, good evening. But like my Australian friend would say, just a good day. That suffices. So to all our subscribers, our viewers all over the world, thank you for your loyalty. We're back again. It's Atlantic Discuss. Yes, no holds barred. We say it the way it is, facts or nothing. Now, my focal point has always been my country of birth, Nigeria. Nigeria, as you know, and like I've always said, is the largest concentration of Black people on the planet. And right now, statistically, economically, Nigeria is acting very much behind schedule as a country. There are statistics that have showed us that 1 out of every 4 sub-Saharan African is in Nigeria. As a matter of fact, there are other statistics that tell us that 1 out of every 6 Black people on the entire planet is in Nigeria. So much so that the largest concentration of Black people is Nigeria, the beacon of the Black world at independence. There's almost no country in the Southeast African axis that cannot, that did not have the footprint of Nigeria behind its independence. But we are where we are, formerly the largest economy in Africa, now the 4th, and competing with what you call mediocre or average African countries. Where are we? Where are we going? So we agreed last year in one of our discussions, instead of focusing so much on what's happening in the presidency, let's look at the state. Let's focus on our state. What is happening at the state? Do we have a trickle-down effect? Now, we know we have 36 states in Nigeria, 774 local government. They all get a percentage of the national, what you call FAC, federal allocation, the national treasure. What are they doing with it? The current president has said he's doing his best, but the governors are not doing what they're supposed to do. And we all know that the local government who are closer to the people are also, we don't know, in some cases, they are not even allowed to operate. They don't have access to their budgetary allocation. So today we're focusing on Anambra State, and we're going to talk to a man who should know what's happening and who we think has planned to change things in the future. So our guest today is Mr. Val Ozigbo. Mr. Ozigbo, welcome to Atlantic Discuss.
Thank you so much, Ade. It's a pleasure.
Fantastic. I'm sure he's not a stranger to a lot of you. Mr. Ozigbo is an accountant. He was top of his class in Osaka. His work in Transcorp. He was even group CEO. So and I'm sure he has a repertoire of intelligence when it comes to economic management and all that. So our first question to you before we go into all we want to ask you, are you running for governor of Anambra State?
By the grace of God, I will be the next governor of Anambra State.
Okay, I like that. That's fantastic. So because we're talking about Anambra, and that's why you're here. So now there's so many issues at stake. Anambra is not one of the poor states in Nigeria. It's not one of the states that is behind. For obvious reasons, it's endowed, it's had some good and bad times. But I'll ask you, what are you going to do about the security situation in your state if you become governor?
Okay, thank you. Before I delve into that question, I'd like to commend you for that intro. It's really about situating things properly. Talking about Nigeria that is lagging behind. We're also talking about Black people that have become a doldrum of the world. And the question here is this going to continue forever? When is it going to change? When are we going to be able to catch up with the rest of the world? When can we actually be able to restore the dignity of a Black man in the world? And that takes us to that. Some of those commentaries you've also made. Yeah. If that will ever happen, it's in Nigeria. And I also want to say this, without sounding immodest, that quite frankly, the Igbos, the Southeasterners, have a lot to say or do in changing that story. Because if you go back to history, and if you know where we started from, the various sectors, the contributions we've made, you will understand that it is one place that if we're able to do things right, it can actually become very catalytic because after all, the Igbos, we usually are the second community apart from the indigenes in anywhere else in Nigeria. If you go to Lagos, after the Yorubas, the next is Igbos. You go to Kano, after the next is Igbo. So there's something unique that if we get it right in Igbo, you will see a much higher transformational changes that can orchestrate that restoration of the dignity of Black man in the world. And Anambra is seen as a headship of the Igbos. So I want us to understand that this is not just talking about Anambra, any one of the states. No, this is actually where the discussion ought to begin. And if you think about the past, take your mind, cast your mind back in the past. Anything that's ever happened, you will see Anambra the epicenter of it. Are you talking about independence? Nelson Mandela would even tell you that he was inspired by Nnamdi Azikiwe from Anambra State. Are you talking about the educational sector? Go back to what has happened, even the UNN and the University of Ibadan. You'll see that the Igbos can indicate first vice chancellor and can go in there. Talk about the likes of Chinua Achebe. Even in the religious world, the only African saint, so it was African saint we have alive. Today, 20th of July, happens to be the feast day in the Catholic Church. Happens to be from Anambra State. If you go to the entertainment world, if you go to the business world, they will even tell you that Anambra is the concentration of highest number of billionaires in Nigeria, if not Africa. So there's something unique about Anambra, and we are going to talk about Anambra of our dream when I speak about it. So I think I would like to start from there before going into what are you going to do in different sectors.
Please go ahead. Go ahead, no problem.
Next thing I also want to say here is I usually don't jump into making promises because most times the mistake we make as Nigerians, as people, is because we are not able to, the part reason why we are being looked down upon is because of failure of leadership. There are other reasons, but the most important is leadership failure. And when we talk about leadership failure, it starts from recruitment. How do we choose who becomes the next local government chairman, the next governor, the next president? Most time, people just concentrate on manifesto and promises without paying attention to the most important thing. Who is the person coming to the office? Does he have the right character, personality, competence, emotionally intelligent? Is he just an ignorant fellow who thinks he knows it all? Who can? Because if you get it wrong from the character of the person, forget about what he's coming to do that he has promised you. In the case of Anambra again, you find that our current governor came promising Dubai, Taiwan is going to transform Anambra to become African Dubai, Taiwan. Anambra people have been asking, forget about Africa, Dubai, Taiwan. Give us Asaba, give us Aba, just give us those local communities around us. Why again am I saying this? We will talk about security issues because it's the most important thing in Anambra. But that ought to be almost secondary to who and who and who. Who is this person coming to occupy an office? Is he competent, compassionate, emotionally intelligent enough for that office? Because if you get it right from the personality perspective, even if he doesn't have all the answers to the issues, he'll be humble enough to gather the right people, competent enough to strategize, and he will be supported by qualitative people that can help you deliver the kingdom of democracy. And let me go straight into your question. Security is a factor of many issues. One is economic. Like in the case of Anambra, we have a lot of issues because of economical issues. We also have a lot of issues because of people who are agitating for different reasons, one reason or another. We also have issues because some are just pure criminals. But more fundamentally, we have issues because we have leadership failure. When you don't have a leader who will prioritize issues about welfare and security, which is the #1 priority of governance, and you focus in other areas, what you find that it gets to a point that you become overwhelmed, and that's what we are facing in Anambra today. The story is not good at all. I don't want to do justice to demarketing Anambra anymore. You can talk about the story, you can read about it, but it is not palatable. And part of the reason is because we've not paid adequate attention to this. And when we prioritize this, you'll find that some of the states within the Southeast are even doing better than us, even though we share the same economic agitation and other issues. So why is, for instance, a lot of people perceive Enugu to have better security than Anambra? A lot of people perceive Abia is because of leadership. And now that takes us to what are we supposed to do? I have recently done a video, actually multiple videos. I've been to radio stations, I've written on social media, just canvassing on what we need to do. I think that we need to get Anambra people together, not the entirety of Anambra State, key stakeholders, those from government, from political, different parties, opposition, incumbent, those from security agencies, army, police, and what have you, and down to the vigilante, those in the church, those in the Igwe, those in, when we get all these people, we're able to actually tell ourselves the home truth. Because there are things that each of us will have to do to contribute to changing the status quo. So we need to get into that conversation as quickly as possible and declare a state of emergency. Because if you do a deep root cause analysis, you'll figure out where some of these things are coming from. If you engage the security agencies, you hear things that they are not being mobilized enough, they are not being motivated, and sometimes they can't even get intelligence from local community. If you engage the local community, you find out, even if you hear that they have been taken to an oath, a shrine, so they feel obligated not to volunteer information. Some of them are accomplices. They help the criminals and share the ransom. So they're comfortable that way, even though their fellows are being murdered, are being maimed. So you find all those reasons. In my opinion, there is a need for us to do what we have to do to show hope, present hope, and get people to be gainfully employed and reduce the amount of criminals we have on the street and deal with the criminals decisively. Through, number one, getting a proper intelligence gathering system. Have a control room, monitor, leveraging technology to know what you have to do to gather information. If you hear there's an incident in Oka, you can map it through and get to the destination, figure out where those guys are hiding. There are things you can do to neutralize them in those places and or arrest them, as case may be. What is important here is to make Anambra uncomfortable for criminals. And if you show political will, and if you're a good person yourself and you're not compromised, you're not one of those that will partner with criminals to get into office. And when you not get into office, you don't even know how to now unpartner, dissociate with yourself from those guys. And that has been the case. You hear, like, even when Buhari was in power, some of what happened with the banditry, the people they partnered with. And when they're in now, they couldn't summon enough courage to say, go back to Niger, go back to wherever other countries they might have come from. So and that's the challenge. When you have people who are wrong people, they lack they foreclose the possibility of redeeming, finding solutions into the problem. So when we're able to get the right person who has the right interest and political will, deploy the right strategy, like some of what I'm talking about, you will get these things unraveled. If you motivate security agencies well, show them concern, empathy, provide adequate resources, deploy the security boats that they will budget for all the time. If you do these right things, you will reduce the incidence of criminality to the barest minimum. And that's the only way more businesses will return back to the roots, and you're able to create more jobs. And ultimately, you have Anambra of our dreams.
Interesting. So, what you said, in my opinion, is the obvious thing to do, bringing stakeholders together and all that. So are you saying the governor there today is not doing all that?
None.
Oh, wow. Wow. Anyway, well, before I go into the economic situation and what you want to do in that regard, there's something that I like talking about. That's elections. Nigeria's election in the past were free, but not fair. And the way we see it now, right now, they're not free and they're not fair. So it's not just about running for office. How do you want to, see that the next gubernatorial election in Anambra State is free and fair? I'm sure you have a lot of experience in what has been happening in Nigeria election in recent times. So it's a focal point. How can the election be free and fair? We saw Ondo, whether it was free and fair, I don't know. We saw Edo, whether it was fair or fair, I don't know. But it does look like the people are poor, they will take money, and the rest is history. But there are complaints everywhere. The PDP is in court over the Edo case, and it does look like even the police and other elements of government are helping to stop justice from being upheld. So in your case, Anambra State, how do you want to fight that? How do you want to see to it that the votes of the people count?
Thank you. It's a recurring question that I've had to deal with many times. And there's this impression people have that, forget it, election votes don't count in Nigeria. They're going to write it, they're going to rig it, they're going to buy it, they're going to suppress it, they use all those, and particularly, when we think about what has happened in some of the states and in Nigeria in recent past. So it tends to give credence to those type of feelings. However, my usual recount is, so what do we do? If this is how elections have happened in the past, what do we do? So we give up then. The winner can as well even stay forever. And we can actually just keep quiet, let them keep writing. And we just keep, I don't know, wasting our time, complaining, talking like we're talking now. And after the talk, nothing happens. So what do we do? And it's a very serious question that we all need to answer. And the worst thing that can happen to us is the moment we shift away from answering that question and looking for who to blame, who else to blame, then we're finished. We're going nowhere. And I refuse to be one of those who will simply just give up and even stop trying because the possibility of a victory is remote. It is when you stop hoping, you're dead already. When you stop trying, you're finished. So what I tell people is we must keep pushing until we get the Nigeria of our dreams. And not just pushing strategically and smartly. There are a couple of things that we can insist on as a nation, as citizens. If we need to undergo a major protest in this country to ensure that certain legislation are passed to further safeguard and ensure the integrity of the process, then we have to do that. If we have to insist that citizens must then get up and be able to say enough is enough, and if it's possible in a very peaceful manner. I'm using the word if it's possible because we also may not eventually foreclose other means, because I don't think we should continue to swallow things the way they are. We've got to constructively engage to change the status quo. And there are a lot of things that can be done in that regard. We can insist on electronic voting, meaning we can even get to a possibility we can be in the comfort of our homes, and even the diaspora can do so if we use a proper blockchain technology, devise a system where you can actually just, once you have a unique identifier that makes it impossible for you to vote twice, more than once, and you're able to then, go back and recheck, and there's a trail of what has happened. Oppositions can look at it, and it becomes so obvious. We can devise such a solution, and that can be a way to go. Even if we don't get to the point of electronic solution voting, let's insist on electronic transmission from the polling units. It is usually more difficult for an election to be manipulated at the polling unit level if we get it right at that level. It's once you are moving away from there and going to these coalitions has become a synonymous name for criminality in election matters in Nigeria. So what I'm saying to you, there are things that can be done to fundamentally get things right. And that is important if we must restore the dignity of Black man in Nigeria and the rest of the Black world. Now, but even in the midst of all these concerns and inadequacies, you can still win an election in Nigeria fairly and squarely. The only thing that you're now required to do, number one, win with enough margin. Don't allow the margin to be closed if you are a popular candidate. Give it your all. Just make sure you're able to mobilize enough people. I have seen many elections in Nigeria with enough margin that people were, even when either the incumbents or people who have authority tried to manipulate, it became impossible for them. Kano is a case in point. NMPP won with enough margin. And so if any other party wanted to attempt to manipulate, they saw the impossibility and they gave up. So it has happened. I don't want to keep mentioning, there are many states, even Edo you mentioned, if there's any infringement in Edo, it is because the margin was closed. I feel that certain fights of Baseki should have taken in PDP at the point of this election. I know it was difficult, but issues around the Oba of Benin, the deputy governor, the Danobi and co, things could have been managed better so that the vehement opposition internally, people within the same party saying, we will not allow this man to put a successor. And they ended up working for APC. They were able to then close the margin so that if there were now attempts to manipulate, they tend to succeed. So in our case in Anambra, I believe that if Anambra people take a position and say, this governor, you've not done well, we don't like your governor style, we have to make a change, and come out to make that statement, there's nothing anybody, including INEC and judiciary, would do to alter that status quo. And that's what we're trying to get Anambra people to understand. If they feel he's doing okay, no problem, follow suit, be comfortable with him, let him come back. But if you think he's not doing well enough, who is the next alternative? If you have identified such a person, then come out with everything that you have. If you do so and safeguard your polling units and your wards, nothing will go wrong. And so why I'm talking, I had to differentiate two things here. Fundamental things we need to do to get it right going forward, where it wouldn't even matter whether you know INEC or no, or if you get this issue of electronic voting and co, you will render INEC's interference in elections redundant. You will render security redundant. You will render many things redundant. But even until that is done, because Anambra is this year, so we're not going to fold our hands and wait until all these things are done. In the interim, what do we do? So I'm assuring people there are other things we're also going to do that I won't volunteer publicly. The point thing here is that take a position, be there, be present to safeguard and protect that position. If we're able to agree on this, then by the grace of God, my first statement to you would come to pass, that I'll be the next governor of Anambra State.
All right, let's look at Labour Party. You said something about changing the law, the electoral law as amended and all that. Now, today we know, Labour Party is clearly not the majority in both lower and upper house, but a lot of your members have defected, So how do you think you can influence amending the electoral bill when your party doesn't have the majority? That's one. Secondly, are you still a member of the Labour Party? Over to you, Mr. Ozigbo.
The point here is not even about party affiliation when it comes to legislation that makes sense. If we have the right people pushing this and Nigerians come out, can you imagine if we all come out on a Saturday peacefully, or even on a Monday, all the sit at home that we do in some part of Southeast, nobody goes to work. Nobody goes to work until a legislation is passed about the issues I've spoken about, either transmission or electronic voting. I can tell you within one day, that legislation will be passed if Nigerians insist on that. So it doesn't matter whether you're APC lawmaker or PDP lawmaker. And Nigerians are docile most times when it comes to issues of this nature. If we decide that enough is enough and we're going to push our representatives in the National Assembly to do the needful, they will do the needful. Because if they know you are angry, they won't even be able to come back home anymore. They will, unless they want to live in Abuja forever. My point is that things happen the way they happen because we let it happen. So whether Labour Party is a minority in the House is irrelevant. So that's on one side. Number two, you asked about my party membership. Of course, I'm a member of Labour Party as of today. We also do know that we are challenged in many regards. Many issues are happening in Labour Party. The issue about leadership is a case in point. And people are asking, are we going to be able to resolve this issue before the Anambra election primaries, which is taking place from March in less than, as a matter of fact, in another 1 month, the processes leading to this will start. There will be delegates elections to nominate those that are going to vote in primaries. So different people are engaging to see that we resolve this issue. If we're able to resolve it in due course at the right time, certainly I would love and I would wish to run for this election under the platform of Labour Party. But that's not going to be my only option if the issues don't get resolved, because I believe that the major essence of parties is to give you a platform. The real people that will actually vote for you, not even be party members, is Anambra people that will come out to vote, whether you're in APC, PDP, ABGA, whatever other party. And the momentum we have is such that we can pick any party and actually win the election within this period of time. We have the capacity to do so because I believe the people are already on our side, but we're not here to campaign yet. I don't want to go into because there's a limit of what I can say because the window for campaign hasn't started. So the point here is that I intend to be a candidate in this election, Labour being the preferred, but not the only option.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you so much. I know you are very close to Mr. Peter Obi, the presidential candidate of the Labour Party. And, during the last election, of course, it came third from the way INEC reeled it out. But today, there are a lot of Igbos that are losing their properties in Lagos. A lot is happening against Igbos and all that. I've heard from some of my guests in the past of Igbo origin said that Nigeria is against Igbos and all that. But my question really to you is that, do you feel, in your opinion, that Igbos are marginalized in the Nigerian society?
I feel that many people are marginalized. I feel that the rich is marginalizing the poor. I feel that the leaders are marginalizing the led. I feel that there are many, many, many reasons why people are agitating. So, if there are genuine cases of people losing their property unfairly, and then that is also marginalization. There could be cases where people have done also the wrong thing, built on a seaway, a shoreline, and in that regard, certain, what I call consequences abound. So if that is the case, then I wouldn't call that marginalization. So it's always important to separate the issues. Obviously, even during the election, there were cases of abuses where people were not even allowed to. And when you come out, they will check to see which tribe you're from or who you're likely to vote. And all of those things happened. And what I keep calling on the leaders to do is to ensure a law and order society. Sometimes People do some of these things for selfish gain, not knowing that they are destroying the country, because one thing that has to be fundamental for us to make progress is presence of law and order. And it comes in different forms. It is not just about what the judiciary does, which is also very important. Our judiciary, the image is in tatters today. What are we going to do to raise the image of judiciary so that it's not a case of, oh, who has more money buys judgment? How do we deal with that? How do we deal with what happens in the markets where you have double, multiple taxations and people are being harassed in a manner that's punitive and unfair and unjust? And that is also marginalization. How do we deal with that? How do we deal with election matters where people don't just truly want to discharge their franchise and come to the poll to vote and they are stopped? All these things add to the issue of lawlessness or law and order. And I'm begging that we cannot keep doing all these things and allow and get to a point that, you know, we become a banana republic. Now, let's now talk about agitation and marginalization. Today, while, for instance, the Igbos usually, I don't know, for some reason, when the Igbos make their statement, theirs usually get louder. But if you actually look deeper, even at the time, like maybe Nnamdi Kanu was pushing for marginalization, there were also people in the Southwest and the North pushing similar narratives. And I'm not in any way also looking to compare all of this, but I'm saying to you that I have not seen any part of this country that has not complained about marginalization. And when you look at it, it's really absence of quality leadership. Because the moment you find people who are compassionate, who are emotionally intelligent, and they begin to deliver, we will forget that you're Yoruba or Hausa or Ishekiri or wherever. And one thing that I tell people is that most times we focus on irrelevant things of tribe and religion and all that, and use that to define ourselves in the areas that divide us, instead of focusing on the areas of commonality that strengthen us. And they forget that today, you may have a Muslim person, for instance, in power, does not mean that Muslims are happier than Christians in Nigeria. Today, in the past, Obasanjo was president of Nigeria for 8 years. It doesn't make Ogun people better state than the rest of Nigeria. Goodluck Jonathan was president for 6 years and plus. Bayelsa, I'm not sure is the best. I mean, the worst town is in Katsina, where I don't know how, maybe 30% of local governments there are ravaged by bandits. But Buhari just stepped down as president. So all these things about where you are from, where you're not from, is really irrelevant. We need to focus on getting qualitative leadership that will put all those, impressions as things of the past.
So if you get elected governor tomorrow, I mean, after the election, and you see somebody from the north, or there's a Yoruba that's been domiciled in Anambra for a very long time, and the person is competent, would you offer them appointment to your government?
Why not? As a matter of fact, it will even be a pride to, I like what, for instance, Alex Otti is doing. He just appointed, I don't know, either a chief of staff, somebody from Edo State. And of course, majority of the appointments will come from Anambra State. Well, that's given. However, when you identify quality people from other tribes, use that to demonstrate that we're still one Nigeria. And yeah, so I will encourage that and I will do it. And so in case you are interested in the appointment, if that's the reason you're asking, get ready.
Oh, God. Well, I'm one of those Nigerians that been to all the 36 states, actually, and I know the Southeast very well, from Mboyi all the way to Ozobulu, Iyala, Zumba North and all that. So I'm conversant with him, Anambra. But having said that, let's talk about Peter Obi, your Labour Party former presidential candidate. I mean, it's clear to everybody that there has to be political alignment going to 2027. I've spoken to people in your party. I've interviewed the great Oselo Kaubazi, who's been my guest. I've interviewed Oshutokun lately, Dr. Mo, and even Dr. Tanko. So, and there's a question I ask them all the time, and some have answered very well, but going into 2027, will Peter Obi be ready to align, with another candidate, maybe a Kwankwaso from the north or an Atiku, and will he, if for expediency purposes, will he rather be a running mate to somebody just to get the required deliverables? What's your response to that?
Thank you, Ade. I'm happy you mentioned all the people you've spoken to, and indeed you have spoken the right people. In 2023 election, I supported to be very actively, and it was an honor for me. We pushed the boundary, and Nigerians welcomed. Movement was generated, and you can see that really when Nigerians see quality, they embrace also quality. And I served as a special advisor on technology and strategic alliances. We built the situation room we used to monitor activities before, during, and after the election. And I would say that beyond that, I supported in many other areas, including fundraising. And as of today, my focus is about the Anambra governorship. And because Peter Obi usually would like to allow fairness and equity and justice, he wouldn't want to just identify a particular person as his candidate. And so what I've done is to try to just move a little bit away from Peter Obi. So I'm not privy to all of those conversations going on, but they're live. So I won't be able to give you any information that you're asking for. However, I have an opinion on that. My opinion is that APC is in power, and you have a very strong president, a politician in power. The only chance any form of opposition can make any meaningful inroad is to come together. And the challenge is, will selfishness and greed allow the politicians to come together? Will they allow objectivity to reign? It's a big question that we all need to ask. And we've heard all manner of permutations. This one come together with that one. This will running mate, this one be candidate. All of those, what you see at play is selfishness and greed. What I usually tell people is that if you really want to get it right, forget about what the politicians are telling you. Go and check and test these things with the public. Conduct a proper poll. Put up the options there. Sensitize the public. Say to them, would you rather want this person or that person or this and this? And figure out where their sentiments are and follow that sentiment. If you start, loading anybody over, it has to be this person, it has to be that person, you may end up just even destabilizing them more instead of coming together. And in which case, you make it easy for APC to continue in power. So this is my advice generally. And I honestly want and wish us to have a better Nigeria.
All right, thank you. Let's go back to Anambra. I like one of the reasons why I started with security is because I know that if there's no peace, if there's no stability, there's actually no room for development. So now, in Anambra, like is an industrial state. Like I told you, I went to some parts of Iala. I've been to Newi. I've seen factories. I've told people in the past that there's almost no factory, to man that you don't find in places like that, and people find it hard to believe. But having said that, infrastructure rally, Anambra is not there yet. With the armada of billionaires you have. What are you going to do differently to uplift the Anambra State infrastructurally? And how also will you boost the economy of the state if you become governor?
Okay, thanks so much. This is not my first time doing this. 2021, I ran for Anambra governorship. I was in a debate with the current governor and Anambra, and generally people, the feedback was that I won that debate, meaning that I was able to present a clear strategy for transforming Anambra in a coherent and pragmatic manner. It's not just to talk about, like in the case of Soludo, Africa, Dubai, Taiwan. What does that even mean? How do you get to that point? Is that really even what we need? Do you know what has made Dubai what it is? Do such conditions exist in Anambra? And Dubai is also, these are sovereign entities. We are subnational. So there are certain things they've done you can't do. So there are a lot of people who are very good at giving fallopian vision without even thinking through on the execution. And this is the case in point. But in the case of what we present in the Anambra, you will see a very deliberate, thought through strategy of how to take us from point A to point B. And it starts from understanding who we are, our identity, where we are coming from, what has made us succeed in the past, and how do we play to our strengths, and what are our weaknesses and shortcomings, how do we manage those? So Anambra is such a fantastic place that almost everything that we need to transform it is present. The people are there, the place is also small, it's not that big, so it's not going to take too much to transform. The resources are there, not just the one in the government coffers, also in the public hands. How do we inspire the private sector, partner with them, incentivize them, play to their greed so that they can just jump at each other to help you in transforming? So how do you make people to succeed better and faster within Anambra than elsewhere, so that you don't keep preaching Akulono, wealth must come home. You don't preach it. Money goes to where money is comfortable. When Mr. A is doing well in Anambra, people are going to ask, why is he doing well? And we've understood, they want to come back to. So how do we make it? How do we democratize luck when it comes to the conditions for transformation? So this is how we crafted what we call Anambra Chawapu. And let me just share this screen quickly, and then I'll come to you in a second. If you look at this, we have Anambra Chawapu, which is simply for a better and brighter and prosperous Anambra. And here it recognizes our, this is clearly a transformative framework designed to harness the cultural, economic, and historical strengths of Anambra State, driving sustainable development and fostering continuous improvement across all spheres of society. It is a holistic approach, and it taps into the enduring spirit of the Igbo people, blending tradition with modern strategies to build a self-generative future. And it talks here about the philosophy. It integrates history, geography, culture, and tradition, and it covers the socio-political, economic, religious, scientific, and technological. It embodies the essential nature and existential realities and genetic traits of the Igbo people. And we talk about the origin of Anambra and talk about how we have come through even the technological area. It's important to see, when we usually say that we are the Jews of the world or Jews of Africa, there's a strong relationship between us indeed and the people of Israel, who we pride as one of the most successful races in the world. What is it that makes them unique? What is it that makes us unique? What can we learn from them? How do we take it to the next level? And if you do that, you create an Anambra that will be an envy of the world. So you're not going to transport Dubai, Taiwan. No, Dubai, Taiwan will come to Anambra to learn what we have done. After all, our Igbo boy, I wrote a book on that. I don't have a copy next to me here. Our Igbo boy is something that's being studied in Harvard. This is kind of thing we're talking about. What is it that can take us to a level that will propagate the good things about us, that I think about us, and then use that to transform the rest of Black nation. So there's a technological origin. Anambra can be a tech hub. This is just find that entrepreneurship. This is the bad boy book I'm talking about. I co-authored it with Ogechi Adiola, and it's not just a book; it's a blueprint. It's something that talks about all the practices. We interview people who have been there in the past, but we now started thinking, how do we take it to another level? How do we take it to a level that indeed the rest of the world can copy? Don't forget where we started from. After the Civil War, you know the condition of Igbo, saw how much money that was given to them, see where we are today. And this is one of the game changers. How do we now propagate this key strength that we have? And going to the entrepreneurship and then going to the power women, how we can leverage our women maximally and the youths as well. And then how do we also build a society that accommodates everybody, inclusive and egalitarian? And how do we create an Anambra where people with disabilities can, feel at home? How do we leverage our multicultural heritage and multidisciplinary excellence? We've been very good in medicine in the olden days, in arts and craft, in music, and in all these areas, music and religion. How do we leverage this? I mentioned these are the two cardinals that we have in Kali Church. Both are from Anambra State. And it tells you that Anambra is indeed unique. In the governance, you also have, indigenous governance style that if you read Chinua Achebe and sometimes what Chimamanda also writes, you begin to feel, clarity as to the type of, and if you hear about Umonna and Itobo, Utuobo, and all these, and also these are traditional governance institutions that we can leverage today to deal with issues that we face. And when you also talk about being a model of human advancement and sustainable civilization, focusing again on education, this is the point I'm making here. Those who lack the capacity to harness Anambra's potential, understand these people will continue to compare it to places like Dubai or Taiwan. Anambra is its own unique model that can be exported to the rest of the world. We're indeed called Light of the Nation, and it is not for a reason. It's not accidental, it's for a reason. It is because Anambra has always been at the epicenter of showing light and showing the pathway. And that's why you have people like Nnamdi Azikiwe, who, when he worked them with Dr. Michael Okpara, who is not from Anambra, but an Igbo man, they created a zone, a southeast zone that was considered the fastest growing in the world as at that time. And with Ojukwu, Sir Louis Ojukwu, the father of Ikemba Ojukwu, who was then the richest man in this country, who sat on the top 15 PLCs on the board, and who founded the Lagos Stock Exchange that became Nigerian Stock Exchange. It tells you there's a lot. And this is now talking about Kaizen principle, a culture of continuous improvement. Now, if you focus on this slide, it touches on three things. The three ways we can transform Anambra. And this is now answering your question directly. We want to focus on what we call sector-based approach. Which sectors are important to us, like education, healthcare, and co? What do we need to do in that regard? We have mapped all this, known what we need to deploy, how we're going to do it, and what outcomes to expect. And we know those important areas. And it's not just something we sat down on our own to do. We engaged in the Anambra. We visited the 21 government many times, 7, 8, 9 times. Engaging them, we were able to decipher that what may be good in Oman Barracks may be different from what happens in capital city. What the women want may be a little bit different from what the men want. What the youths want may be different from what the elders want. And that's how we crafted this in a very careful manner. Now, beyond the sector base, there's also the cluster base. There are certain clusters that we must give emphasis on. Onisha is a cluster. How do we make it a center of excellence when it comes to commerce? How do we build those infrastructure that will take it to a level, including possibility of our people being able to bring their goods and commodities closer home. Instead of, if you're importing from Onitsha, you have to clear it in Lagos and go by road and eventually become uncompetitive. It doesn't make sense. What do we need to do to deal with that? What do we do in terms of bandwidth, technology bandwidth? How do we deal with water systems, building systems that last? If you don't have enough money to do that, work with private sector. There's a way to do it. Back it up with legislation, do a PPP model, and there are many people who are interested in this. If you do it properly, after providing proper security, and you create these avenues, you will see money that will flow in. You will now begin to leverage those wealth of our people. And Nnewi is a good industrial hub that we need to focus on. Oka is a good capital city we need to focus on. Omamba is for agri-processing. And we can create a tech hub somewhere like in Old Agwata. If you do all this thing, focusing on them, creating a board that would supervise this and monitor them like we monitor in private sector, you'll see Anambra transform. And then the last approach is what we call partnership approach, focusing on the 4 areas in particular: education and healthcare, and security, and then roads. These 4 areas. You can also even include power to it, but these 4 areas are crucial. If, for instance, Ade is from Anambra State, and I say to you, Ade, where are you from? Maybe you're from Ojoto or Ruku. Okay, I said to you, if you build a 1 kilometer road in Oruku, I'm going to match it with another 1 kilometer road, because our people are doing this already. But now, let's track the performance. Let's make it methodical. Let's compete around it, so that our people will no longer be competing by how much crystal champagne they've drank or Rolls Royce they park in the garage, but by what they're doing. And imagine December period, you gather people like that. Maybe in this year, there are 30 partners. We celebrate them. We honor them. We bring people who are icons of the world. Imagine bringing maybe a Michelle Obama to come and decorate them in Anambra because of what they're doing. You will see that by next year, they will double in terms of number of people who are. How do we leverage these resources that our people possess to transform our state? If we focus on these 3 areas, 3 sector approaches: sector approach, cluster approach, and partnership approach, there's no reason why Anambra will not be the best state this country has. Thank you.
Thank you so much. You can bring out your screen now. Thank you. That was a fantastic explanation. The thing about us is that we always have all these good things, implementation. So I wish you luck in your endeavor, and I hope the people of Anambra will get the best at the next election. So my last question to you is: Anambra is known to be a state of political godfather. So, everybody always a godfather. Do you have a political godfather?
You qualified it this time. Usually, the question I get is, do you have a godfather? And my answer is yes, that God is my father.
Okay.
Because indeed, sometimes I even wish I have one. I've been spending almost all my resources moving around, and nobody's even talking to you, and so I don't have any political godfather. I don't. There are people that
not even Peter Obi.
Peter Obi is not a godfather. Peter Obi is a leader, a mentor that I am proud to associate with. But it's not. If you know the true meaning of godfather, I ran for election in 2021, and Peter Obi campaigned for me around Anambra State. Not one day did we sit down to discuss what he's going to get if I become governor. I'm not even talking about money. I'm talking about office. Some people who are godfather will tell you, I must give you 10 commissioners. I must do this, so I must do that. So godfathers tie your hands because of the support they're giving you. They can actually make a good man to turn out to become a wrong person because they want to control you. No. In this journey, just like we've done in the private sector, there are people who have done this ahead of you. Peter Obi has been Anambra governor, and a lot of people see him as the best governor Anambra has had. So I should be able to talk to someone like that. Okay, in the area of education, how did you do it? And I've learned some of those things. And what I told him is that I'm going to outperform you by God's grace. Because when I get there, all those positive you did, I will replicate those. And I'll put Jara on top of it. And by putting that Jara, I would have outperformed you. And this is what I intend to do. I want to be the best governor Africa has produced. So to do that, you have to learn from, I call them masters, the mentors. So, and that's why I said to you, I don't have. And now I'm looking for money. Maybe if you have some godfather, they can apply now.
Oh, God. So you think Peter Obi is the best governor Anambra has had so far?
I think so. I think so. He has done well, particularly in the area of education. And he did that working with the church, both the Catholic and the Pentecostal. He was able to transfer school system majorly to missionary schools. And these guys have a way of paying better attention. And he also showed presence. He was able to visit almost all the secondary school. And when you do that, you inspire a lot of things, good behavior, people shape up. And there are many other things he has done that I have repeated in many places. So particularly in education. And then when you also talk about security, he did a lot better. When he went into office, we had a lot of security nightmare. But by the time he left, we were probably going to visit Anambra without security. And today you can't do that. You can't. You mentioned some of those communities that you've been to. Go back there. Before you even get close, your friends will tell you, don't come.
It's a long time ago, actually. You know, I'm Yoruba, so a lot of my friends married Igbo women. So that's what made me know the Southeast, actually, you know. So I always have to go to Ozobulu, to Iyala, Ajali, Idewi, Ideni. So it was really fun, and I think it's a fantastic experience.
I want you to also tell the world that those women and the best women you've seen, so that more people can come and marry some more.
Okay. Unfortunately, all my friends are still happily married to those women, and they're prospering.
Exactly.
Tribalism is elitist, actually. People just use it to score political points, and I agree with that. Same thing, really. So thank you, Mr. Valentine Chineto Ozigbo. This has been a fantastic discussion. One of the things we want to do this year is to talk about the quality of opposition politics. I mean, it doesn't mean you're against the government of the day, but for democracy to actually grow, you need very viable opposition, you know, people that can say truth to power. It's a sort of checks and balances. 774 local government, 36 states, 109 senators and all that. If everybody has their hands on deck and the office of the citizen is activated, even the president will be happy because everybody will be, you know, up to task and be doing what they have to do. Because one man cannot solve all the problems. The problems of Nigeria can be solved by everybody. Everybody has a role to play. I've said it before. If you're a policeman that sells bullets to armed robbers, you are part of the problem. If you're a teacher that takes bribe from parents and give that child more scores, you know, in class, you're part of the problem. So the problem is not always the politician. Religious leaders have a role to play. Traditional leaders have to play. Citizen A, B, C, D, all the way to Z has a role to play. Once again, I thank you, Mr. Ozigbo, for coming forward. Possibly before the election, we'll interview you again to see how you're going. We wish you luck in all your endeavors. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. It's actually been a joy, a thing of joy for me talking to you today. Thank you so much. And just before I get off, this point you've made now is so important. Please don't limit it to that word called opposition. Opposition usually comes from the other party that wishes to take over. And usually when they speak, when they act, people don't give it the type of weight that it deserves because they think they're doing it for political reason. What is crucial is also not just letting only the politicians, let Nigerians be true citizens who are holding their leaders accountable. That's actually the organic opposition. When people can speak up, the conspiracy of silence is incredible. In Anambra today, do you know that a TV station went to Oka to try to interview victims of the insecurity? They're not speaking up. They're scared that they may be murdered because if they speak up and they see their face. And so what we have created is a system that we have shut everybody's mouth and there's no society that can evolve that way. And beyond just what I'm talking about, we need to hold our people, our leaders accountable. The real power resides with citizens, not political leaders.
Absolutely.
Because sometimes we are docile. We don't even know we have strength. What happens in Nigeria can't happen in a lot of places like Egypt and Senegal.
You can say that again. You can say that again. I'm telling you.
Wake up so we can be able to say enough is enough. When I'm in power, hold me accountable. This is what I'm begging us to do as the people.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ozigbo. Yes, our vote must count. I think that's the first step. The people's vote must count. Personally, and we say it here at editorial level, it doesn't matter who becomes president. The key thing there is that let the choice of the people be reflected. Let whoever gets the mandate, whoever gets elected, be the proper choice of people. Thank you, Mr. Ozigbo, once again. God bless you. We'll invite you again, I'm sure. Thank you for all you do. Bye.